Congrats on getting beyond $1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of Easy Pay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond $1 million. Jason Fladlien, awesome to see you, man.
Brad, always a pleasure.
It is, man. It is. I was trying to think of when we met, and it's probably been 6, 7, 8 years, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was 2015 or 2014. I'm not sure which year it was.
Genius Network or?
Yep. We were at an annual event and Alex Sharfin says to me, he goes, "Hey, I'm having this private dinner. It's hosted in this, this special setting. Ballers are going to be there. You should come." And so he invited me to to this dinner. You weren't hosting it. Another friend of ours was hosting it, Kevin Donahue. And you and I just happened to sit next to each other at this thing.
Yeah. Oh, got it. I remember that vividly now. It was a good group of people. And Kevin Donahue is hilarious.
Yeah, and I don't know how you got invited, but I certainly didn't get a proper invitation. I just asked it,
Well, so Kevin Donahue and I got a concussion around the same time in 2013. He was riding a motorcycle. I was snowboarding. And it was I had months where I couldn't think straight, had to be in low light, no noise. It was not pleasant. And Kevin had a similar experience. So we connected over that right away. And so I did get a proper invite.
Nice.
Well, anyway, it's great to see you. It's always fun hanging out. You have a crazy background on it. There are a couple things that always come to mind with me inside the field of marketing. And the more time we spend together, the more dynamic I see you as a character. I saw you speak and I had never seen you speak before. And that was, I want to hit on that in a second because that was oh shit, you're a really good speaker. And that's a very different skill set than how I had seen you previously. How I'd known you was product launches and webinars.
Right.
I think a lot of people know you in both of those spaces, but can you give a quick background on how you see yourself in that space, how you came to be and how you found those things?
Yeah, I always thought of myself as a copywriter initially. So that's kind of how I got to break in the business. And it wasn't even like sales copy. I was writing articles for SEO food for Google. And that was effective as a service to others. They would pay me money per article. Got pretty good at it. So I created a product around how I was writing these articles. This is back in 2007, which is dinosaur years in the internet. And people wanted to know I was writing these articles. So I published a product on how to do that and they liked it. So then I started saying, well, what else can I figure out, systematize, and then publish? And then it just got bigger and bigger from there. I always kind of I have a theme each year, or every 2 or 3 years now, as I've gotten older. It takes me a little longer. And it's what do I want to master in this business or of business? And then I set it to task and I try to master it. And so when you talk about, selling on a webinar is obviously public speaking, but that's a different form and structure completely than speaking at a mastermind, like you saw me speak at that one time, which is different than speaking in front of, 17,000 people at a live event. And I just like to master these different skill sets that on their own are pretty effective. And then when you combine them and fold them together, they're even more effective. But the one thing that I don't do that often, Brad, that is by choice, is I like to be selectively public, meaning that I don't have a Facebook account. I do, but I have 4 friends. I'm related to one and the rest of them work for me, right? So it's and I never use it. I don't have an Instagram. And I like to be a celebrity only on my choosing. I like to be well known when I want to be well known, but then I like to be out of the spotlight as much as possible. And so that's where I run very incongruent to what a lot of people do that are personalities in this business who have done big launches or who are faces, gurus, et cetera, is I only like to be in the spotlight when I choose to, and I like to shut it off. And so that's where a lot of what I can do, it seems to lay dormant, I guess you could say, to even people like yourself that we hang out with for years and we're just screwing around. And then I'm like, oh, hold on a second. I got to go do this thing. And you're like, what?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. There's no question. And I want to talk about the difference between speaking and webinar, but I also want to clarify a point because, and I'm sure that we'll, put a title on this that will address this right away. Some of that language, that's kind of like, the idea of I only want to be in the spotlight when I want to, no, I don't do the social media thing. The majority of the people that say things like that just don't actually produce. They don't actually have the capacity to do it.
Great point.
I mean, really. So like normally you hear that narrative and it's worth clarifying that you just came off a $57 million launch over the course of 6.5 months. Is that right?
57,914,510.
I love it. That's awesome. So I want to get back into that. I'll leave that loop open for a minute. But the amount of people inside of certainly the internet marketing world, as well as a variety of other places, marketing in general, copywriting, as you mentioned, anything that a webinar is going to touch or a launch is going to touch, know your name and know your background from it. So that's one of the things that, in fact, that has nothing to do with why we get along or why we hang out. But there's a through line, which is that you're very interesting in general. And I think you're interesting because you're interested. So I love the idea of a 2 to 3 year theme where you can work on mastering something. And that speaks to getting interested. Well, fuck it. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the launch that you just did and what the dynamics there were?
Yeah. And I'm still like, I have PTSD, post-traumatic syndrome disorder. I'm trying to work out how I could rename that with launch, product, launch. This is like one of the first public things I've done since then. And we concluded on December 15th, and it's January 6th at the time of us recording this of 2022. And so in short, what happened is I'll try to keep this as short as possible and try to distill some really powerful lessons immediately. Is this is something that was absolutely not on our radar. And we didn't even make the first sale till May 28th. But a associate of ours who we had published off and on through years came to us with a concept in crypto, which I had owned exactly $0.00 in crypto previous to that. And he showed us what he was doing. Now, Rapid Crush is our company. It was co-founded by myself and Wilson Matos, my business partner. And throughout the years, we co-founded that in 2011. Our whole attitude was, let's find the very most useful thing that we can put in front of the largest amount of people that we could reach to positively impact them the most. That's essentially our mission statement. And so it could be products we create, and we've done a lot of those. I've created over 200 products. It could be products that we promote as an affiliate. We set the record in 2015 because we sold $9.8 million in affiliates as an affiliate for a product promotion in the Amazon space, teaching people how to private label and sell products on Amazon.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. We just did this $57 million launch. Our top affiliate I wish they would have broke my record, right? Like they didn't do half of $9 million. And so whatever, though, and then this one is we published it. So whether we're creating the product, whether we're publishing it or promoting it, the mission is the same. What does this group of people need desperately that they're not getting? Can we give it to them in a way that can empower them better than anybody else can? And can we reach them? That's always fundamentally the philosophy that we approach to it. And we're very agnostic in terms of how we do that. It doesn't have to be me on the product, or it doesn't have to be even us publishing the product. It is there an advantage? Now, 80% of the time in the market, there's no clear-cut winner. There's like 7 or 8 or 10 different methodologies that are all incrementally, maybe one's a little bit better or worse than the other, but it's just business as usual. Work your ass off. Don't make any money while you're awake 20 hours a day so you can make your money in the 4 hours you sleep. That's called making money while you sleep. Most of us very successful business owners, we know the deal. We grind for 4 or 5 years, and then the 6th year, the tree actually grows and produces fruit. And then we make a huge payday. But oftentimes it's a lot of work to make reasonable money, maybe $1 million, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 5, maybe 10 million a year. There's definitely those ceilings when you break through. In this particular case, because we had published previous stuff from Dan Hollings, when he came to us, we knew he was good. He was really selective in terms of who we could put him in front of previously, marketers mostly. But when we saw what he was doing in crypto, we realized we could transcend a marketing audience and we could reach an investment audience, which was exciting to me because we never really marketed to an investing type of audience before. And also simultaneously, like crypto is the biggest thing that's ever existed since the advent of the internet. Like I always thought Amazon would be hard to beat. I thought that was our Haley's comment, Brad, because, biggest e-commerce platform in the world turns into the biggest store in the planet. How you got to top that? I mean, you could live 5 lifetimes and never get that lucky, so to speak, to show up at the right place at the right time to coincide with this revolution that was happening. But that was just commerce. Crypto transcends that. It transcends even finances. But Dan showed us this method, and we're like, oh my God, out of everybody buying crypto right now, we feel like we could reach a lot of people or people considering buying crypto, put this in front of them, and immediately they would see that this is more advantageous than anything else they could be doing. That was our premise. Okay. Now, here's what Will and I did that I really enjoyed being able to contribute to this promotion amongst everything. And it was completely a team effort. But I'm just going to speak from the marketing and the strategic positioning aspect. So to back up a second, Brad, and I know this is a high level audience you reach here. I go fast and I hit a lot of things. I promise I'll tie them all up, right? My hierarchy of what's important in business is here's marketing. Strategic positioning sits atop of marketing. If you're chopping down a tree, the marketing is the axe swinging and the strategic positioning is the sharpening of the axe first. A lot of people are trying to chop down trees with dull axes. They're using marketing. But what we try to do is position something so that the marketing naturally flows from it in a way where we're swimming downstream as opposed to swimming upstream. It becomes a byproduct of the proper type of positioning. So I'll give you a very basic example of that. The personal computer was kind of this machine that computed things and was crunching and doing technology, and it was industrial grade. And that was all you had, right? And then Apple comes along and they put colors on it. They make it cool. They make it like a designer gear. So people now feel superior just by walking around with their MacBook Pros. Who knows if it's a better computer or not? And Apple becomes the most valuable company in the world. What they did there was position their product not as a computer for geeks, but as a fashion accessory. And that is strategic positioning. Elon Musk didn't say, hey, we're crunchy granola type of electric vehicles. He says, dude, watch this. They go from 0 to 60 faster than your butthole can pucker. It's like, oh, that transcended the crunchy granola crowd and it entered into a whole new thing. That's strategic positioning. Now, all marketing will support that. And you need good marketing still. But a chef with bad ingredients could be the best chef in the world, and he's still not going to cook a world-class meal. And so here's what Will and I immediately hit upon and realized was Dan came to us and he had what I considered the very best system for producing cash flow that I'd ever seen. And the market we knew we could easily reach, cash flow was their primary concern. Building wealth was a fantasy that, they can't eat philosophy. They need actual money in the bank account by the end of the month just to feel safe. And we had that. And it was powerful and it was easy to demonstrate and it was exciting. But the flaw immediately in what Dan had provided to us was the following. He had only shown this. First of all, he was very successful with it. He made millions doing this, but he'd only shown it to like 6 people. They were all successful, fantastic. However, 2 problems. Problem number 1, they were all friends of his. And problem number 2, they were all already successful business people. And so we had anticipated this going in. What's the major constraint to the sell? See, Brad, oftentimes when people do marketing or even business, they only focus on the benefit. What can I give to them? What can I offer? What can I make better? How could I improve? Yada, 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 right? I try to, as much as possible, say, what's the excuse that if I removed it would automatically have the thing occur? And so instead of trying to get them excited to move forward, I instead remove the thing that stops them from moving forward. And then naturally, as a result, they tend to move forward. And so we wanted to remove that biggest constraint because I could show results till we're blue in the face. And I know that that percentage of the market that changes everything would still be resistant. We would have done 10 million probably instead of 57 million. So that was the first thing. Now, here's the second thing. And this is super important as well. How do you put a value on something that's never been sold?
I mean, my answer to that is you create it yourself or you anchor it to something else.
Exactly. And that's what we always do. So it's like, hey, listen, I got a brand new program. Like, let's take weight loss, for example. You could say, hey, listen, here's the value of this thing. Instead of, emotional eating and doubling your grocery bill and then having to go to a therapist for 10 years because of the trauma involved in that, and that totals $57,227. You could instead buy my weight loss program for $99. What a great deal, right?
Yes.
So relative comparison to other established values is a great way to show why your thing is a bargain, because otherwise it's just expensive. Like when we rolled this out initially, we tested it at a $2,500 price point, and then we officially launched at a $3,500 price point. That's not chump change. That's not, couch cushion money. That's a lot for anybody to invest. And then on top of that, to make the system work, they need $3,000 in the crypto market. And then they need to buy a third-party software. Talk about a convolution of all convolutions. You're asking a person, hey, pay me essentially $7,000, you complete stranger. And yeah, trust me, we make them sign an NDA and a user agreement. I mean, you've seen this, right? So we'll break down some more of that stuff later. Like, this is hardcore. This is really high stakes kind of stuff. So traditionally, you either try to build up value by comparing it to other things, and also build up value through sales and through language by saying, listen, does it matter if you pay me $2,500 if you make 2 times that back in a month, right? Those are all good techniques. Everybody that's competent has them in their toolkit. But there's one strategic positioning tactic or method, whatever you want to call it, that's even more effective than that. That's when you could say, hey, these people over here paid this much for this, and you're only going to pay a fraction of what they paid for it. And that is really where it's super valuable, because now you're not comparing it to something else. You're comparing it to itself. So on a practical level, here's what this meant. Will and I are looking at this problem that nobody, A, nobody's bought this program. B, we don't have a program to sell. So how do we create the program? And C, we don't have a value established for this that would give us the sharpest axe possible to chop down this tree. So what we did was the following. We sent out an email to a small segment of our audience saying, hey, listen, we got the system. We're now doing it. It's working well for us. It's working well for the 6 people that Dan showed it to as well. It's in crypto. It's different. It's weird. And here's the deal. Dan's willing to attempt to teach it to you via 2 private one-on-one Zoom sessions. And we'll see if we can teach this to you. Now, here are the caveats. 1, you have to invest at least $5,000. You can't invest more than $25,000. Caveat number 2 is your risk tolerance has to be a 10 out of 10, meaning that like you're the kind of guy that goes to Vegas, puts it on black, and don't care if you win or not. And the third criteria is, well, nobody likes to lose $25,000. If you lost $25,000, it wouldn't change your lifestyle. You would still be able to pay the rent next month. If you agree to these 3 terms and you want to pay $10,000, we'll take you in, and Dan can only take in 14 people at a time, and we'll cycle through it. If you're interested, let us know. I'm giving the very condensed version of this, but essentially that's the initial story that we built out. Now, what did we do here? A couple of things. If people were to buy this, we've established a price tag at $10,000. So if we sell it later for $2,500, it's a 75% discount, essentially. Now, it's not the exact same thing because Dan's teaching this informally via one-on-one sessions as opposed to in a course, but it's the same material. Second thing we've done here is we've extended the ability to have strangers with results, as I call it, right? Hey, Dan took people from all walks of life, young, old, black, brown, white, yellow, whatever the different genders are these days. Maybe we have more than 2, right? We'll take them all, experience, no experience, what have you, and have a wide variety of different case studies and use cases that could validate that this thing actually works. And so we have that. And then the third thing that we have here as well is the ability to test this out. Are people interested in this? To what degree are they interested in it? Can we focus on just making sure we can actually teach this and validate this without any negative ramification? Now, there's a couple little extra special flavors I put in there, Brad. Here's the first thing. You got to think like the end customer far before you ever get to the end customer. We put a cap on $25,000. We said you can't invest more than that, because I had anticipated that if some millionaire came and put like $200,000 into the system, Joe and Jane at home watching on a webinar later would say, well, no wonder it worked for them. It's $200,000. I only have, $5,000 to put in. So we had already anticipated future potential objections and future proofed them in advance. We also made them sign an agreement that said we could share what their results were. So not like, hopefully they'll let us share it later. Like, no, it was hardcore black and white. You're going to be part of this program and you're going to get first dibs at the table. We also disclosed and told them, Brad, we will sell this later for $2,500. You can wait later and purchase it, or you can get the one-on-ones. And then this is an aside, but what I find is a lot of people are very timid in their marketing. Like it's your planet. You make the rules, build it however you want it to be. And people will generally respect that more than the normal smoke and mirrors that you see in marketing. So when we're telling them, we are going to sell this course later, you could wait for later. I don't know if that's a good idea for you or not, but it might be, it might not be. If you lost $25,000, you could lose it all. I don't know. I can't predict the future. You're going to have to be okay with that. Now, these are the tastemakers. This isn't your mass market, right?
Well, let me back out of that for a second.
Please do. And you'll have to do this several times because I get on a beat and I don't stop, right?
Well, of course. So, Jason, this clearly illustrates why we can stay up until 2:00 in the morning drinking wine and talking, and why you get in a group of people and start talking and I can't pull you away because you get so engaged, which, by the way, is engaging for everybody because all of it is super valuable. But I want to recap a little because one of the first things that you said was strategy before marketing, right? Strategic thinking and placement, strategic positioning, I think was the language before marketing. And a lot of the things that you're talking about and alluding to are thinking through the process. So when you talk about, hey, a lot of marketers don't feel like they can control their own world, right? It is your world to market is the language that you used. I think part of that is that people don't step back enough to think about all of the nuances of what you just said you were thinking about, right? Two is you said you wanted to make sure that there was a problem present and you had a product you could deliver to solve the problem. And you realized right away that you didn't have the evidence to do that. And so instead of launching the product right away, which by the way, you could have, right? You could have just done the launch with the product. You're in a crypto market that's hot as hell, right? The whole world wants to participate, but doesn't know how really. You could have launched and sold the shit out of that still.
Yeah, we would have made millions, right?
Absolutely. But instead, you said, hey, you know what? We want to solve this constraint that we see that's going to be upcoming, which is people need evidence. They're not, having middle-aged, rich, white people succeed at this is not something I can relate, most people can relate to, or a lot of the audience can relate to. How do we solve that? And so before you even went down the path, you were strategically thinking through how to knock those problems out so that when you did the official launch, you had already solved those things.
Right. And while limiting the downside. So say this thing didn't work out, we're not out anything. Nobody's going to be upset if we took their money and we screwed the pooch with it, right? Because everybody came in fully informed of what was at stake. And those are very good reasons. And here's the other cool thing. I mean, it's not that big a deal once you start doing big numbers, but if you get 14 people to pay you $10,000, you just manifested $140,000 out of thin air to have some guinea pigs to play.
The test. I love it. Well, and the other thing that I think is worth noting here is that all of that language is really strong. It's a really strong push away, right? So it almost taunts people into buying the product.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh, no, I have risk tolerance. Oh, no, I can do that. Right. And of course, it depends on the language that you use and how you present it. But certainly when it comes from a credible source, also, it's alluring. Yeah. It's like, oh, wait, Jason thinks he's got this thing that's exciting. And no, only certain people can do it. We only have 14 spots. And you've got to have high risk tolerance. But the upside could be pretty ridiculous. We've seen it work.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite thinking through that, Brad, because I've done this a few times, it's like this. It's like, listen, so-and-so did it. Maybe they got lucky. Yeah, they showed 5 other people. Maybe everybody got lucky, right? This is the first time we're going to really try to validate this to see if it's been a lucky head call and a coin flip 17 times in a row or not. And the audience is like, come on, Jason, you're being way too cautious. So you're being way too conservative. Now they're convincing me that they're willing to do this. Now, this only works if you have trusted customers who you've positively served and impacted previously. Because a lot of these people, we have various customers from all walks of life, but we have a lot of successful customers who we've helped be successful, who will give us the benefit of the doubt, who are happy to be guinea pigs. This doesn't work mass market.
Well, Let me challenge that. So I think it probably, my assumption here is that it works best that way.
It does.
But you can also borrow credibility pretty effectively and get a similar response.
And you could sell to a mass market with this framework of, like the P90X framework, where it's like total insanity, right? You're going to die when you do it, but before you die, you might like it. I don't know. And people are like, I'll buy that. So there are certainly ways you can do that. What I've discovered in mass markets where people have very big problems is empathy tends to be the most effective sales tool that you can use. Now, to a successful entrepreneur, challenge is the most powerful psychology that you can use. Me and Brad are on the phone the other day, and Brad's like, I'm talking to him about cold plunges because I started doing it. He was like, yeah, me and my boy here, we got in this cold plunge. And I said, I'm going to do it longer than you. And he says, no, I'm going to do it longer than you. And I'm laughing because I'm like, I'm the same way. We get ultra competitive.
And what was crazy about that is that particular thing, it was unspoken. There was no challenge or communication. We were just sitting in there. In my head, I was like, I'm not fucking getting out of this tub until he gets out. In his head, he's thinking the same thing, right? And that's also, by the way, why challenge is such a successful lever with entrepreneurs, because it doesn't have to be spoken, right? We've all got it embedded, ingrained into us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And and there's that unspoken concept too of like, hey, do you want to miss the boat on this hot thing or not? Are you going to be a cautious Kathy? And they're like, no, I'm going to show you. But at the same time, everything we said, it's not just a framework for marketing. All of it's true. Like, we didn't want people coming in who were going to grief us and stress us out because they're worried about everything, because that would affect our ability to deliver and keep the purity of the test. So we wanted to remove all the variables that could get in the way so we could just focus on, can Dan actually teach this to people? Now, we were 99% confident that he could, but we wanted to give ourselves our out just in case. And if it worked, fantastic. Now, what I had anticipated incorrectly is I figured we'd get 14 people on. A few of them would implement it. Of the few, a couple of them would be successful. And then we would do it again 3 or 4 more times. And then we would launch a product. What happened was, not only did we get 14 people, Brad, we got 18 because we tried to churn away after 14, but people came to us and said, listen, I'll pay you $20,000 to do this. And we're like, okay, I guess some days I'm a pushover. If you want to double the money that I asked you for, that's a clue, by the way. We never anticipated that, but Will and I are like, all right, it's ramp up time. Whatever, we got a big bucket. We're standing outside trying to catch money. We need a bigger bucket, right? Because this is about to get serious. We had 53 people say, I'll put $10,000 down. We took 18 and we told the rest of them to wait. Dan did the 18 sessions. It was absolutely brutal on his part to get those all done, because we did it within the span of 14 days. That was the promise.
Wow.
And all 18 of them eventually, very quickly, had success in what we got so lucky here, Brad, because the third-party software that we use to sell this crypto thing has a share link functionality. And if you have this URL, you can see every active open crypto automation that person's running. And it's a third-party account. It's not me writing some stuff on a spreadsheet, which could be changed or, done funny business to. And so that was part of our agreement too, is that they allowed us to utilize that in our marketing. So we anticipated the possibility of these things. So if they did occur, we could use them. And so we now have 18 100% successful case studies that we could go out there and dog and pony show. And we also had Dan's, we had mine, we had my business partner's Will's, we had a preponderance of proof. And so Will, in his genius, he says to me, he's like, dude, I know we were planning on doing 3 or 4 cycles of this. He's like, we got to stop this. So we went back to 40 some people, said, we don't want your 10,000. We can't take it. We're going to launch a course, and and May 28th is when we launched the thing, and it was $2,500. So we switched it from this one-on-one dynamic. Now we have the proof. Dan gets on there and does the webinar, and it's like, basically 90% of it is, let me show you the 18 people that we set up. It doesn't take a lot of creativity when you have that type of impact. And then here's the beauty of what we did here, Brad, because I like to look at marketing campaigns as stories that are unfolding, not as events that have been done that like here's a fact and then how we go out there and take it, right? I want it to be dynamic, not static. And so what we said to the market, and again, all of this is 100% true. It's also just very effective marketing, is we said, listen, this is so important. We don't have time to, pretty it up. Here's the exact language I would use on the webinar, because I would do all the closing. So Dan would do the presentation, and then I would come in, and for the next 2 hours or until people decided not to buy anymore, I would just hammer objections one after the other. And what I would tell people is this. I'd say, listen, whether the Mona Lisa is hanging up in an art museum or if it's tucked into the corner of a dark warehouse somewhere, it's still the Mona Lisa. And that's what Dan has, is the Mona Lisa. We just haven't put it in pretty packaging yet. We're sliding it across the table to you in a brown paper bag. And if you're willing to have dust in the corners and not have a pretty members area, or not, have one long drawn out session as opposed to like 15 bite-sized videos, two benefits to that. Benefit one is you get the course immediately and at a discount. And benefit number two, when we do get around to making it professional looking and all that other nonsense, you're going to get the update to that for free. And so this allowed us rapidly to deploy the products immediately, because Dan didn't have it done. He taught these one-on-one. Now he was going to put it into a training. And this is funny, Brad, because people would be like, how many sessions is it going to be? I don't know. How long are the sessions going to be? Beats me. I don't know. All I know is Dan has this process. If it takes 6 sessions or 7 sessions to teach it, he's going to teach it to you. When's the training going to be? I don't know. It's going to be around this time to this time. We don't have a specific schedule. Buy it or don't buy it. If you buy it, you get a discount. You'll get future updates for free and upgrades for free and all that other stuff, or you can wait. It's totally okay. And so we were able to roll all this out in 1 month.
Yeah, I want to hit on a couple of things there. One, I hope everybody hears that copywriting is your background in your language right now. Well, look, there's so much to it, and how you frame those things is so powerful. And I think some of that at this point just comes out because you've conditioned it for so long. But I also know how tremendously deliberate you are in how you structure things. So I want to talk about how you structured the webinar. But before we do that, I want to highlight that this notion of, I don't know when it's going to be, and I don't know the details. I want to make sure that we clarify there are people that are ready, fire, aim people that are brand new in business, and they get that message and they just throw shit against the wall and try to figure it out as they go. And it's not what's happening here, right? What's happening here is somebody that has done several multi-million-dollar, 8-figure launches and webinars year over year over year, and deliberately crafting the message and creating the case study as you go, one piece at a time. And so while those things aren't structured, they're also deliberately not structured, right? You have the opportunity to play the message accordingly, and you recognize that that's not the important part, right?
Brad, the frame of this all comes from is what best serves the customer. I always say this to my clients is, it's like they let their customers walk all over them. And so like if they have children, I say, your kids, if you left them to your own devices, they would eat candy every single night. You try to get them to eat a vegetable, they'll throw it at you, right? Do you just give in to them and let them eat candy? Your customers will want to take the path of least resistance more often than not. And you could serve them better oftentimes by putting your foot down and saying, listen, this doesn't matter. What matters is you get this material and you are able to implement it. And I know best, and I feel confident to say that I know better than you when it comes to this. But I've proven it first by demonstrating value, et cetera, and utilizing empathy, as we discussed here earlier. But it's always what is best for the customer. So big details have to be like, how does this system work? How is this different than other ways of investing in crypto? There are so many more important things than, is the session going to be an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, right? And it's like, eventually we'll have the answer to that and we will be able to use that. But it's such an insignificant thing compared to what truly matters at the end of the day. Now, what's awesome about this, though, is that if you do this right, and it's easy to do wrong and it's hard to do right, but if you do this right, that excitement and that possibility of being part of history as it unfolds in real time, to be part of a movement, not just to buy a product, those can all work out to your benefit. But again, the brilliance is if we set a very low baseline, exceeding that in terms of expectation becomes very easy. Most marketing is we set an almost impossible to achieve baseline. We get 3% to hit it, and then we're happy. Now, here's the funny thing, Brad, to wrap it back to Easy Pay Direct. For the speed of implementation, we were only taking PayPal at the time, which is hilarious at how horrible it is from a conversion standpoint. I mean, because when we did the launch with you in December, 80% of our customers around there use credit card. Like I kept telling Will, I was like, dude, we're having people use PayPal. A, not everybody uses PayPal. B, PayPal is today's money. It's not tomorrow's money. The credit card, for good or bad, is money that you don't have lying around yet. It's money that will come due in the future. And so to utilize something to have people not have the opportunity to put it on a line of credit is tremendously harder. But for the speed of implementation, we knew we could utilize a PayPal account that we had in good standing for 12 years and roll that out before we had to seriously get concerned about, running $20 million through a merchant account in 14 days, which is kind of a big deal. I mean, they don't like that if you do that out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, my general frame for, I'll hit on merchant accounts for only a second here, but my general frame for that is that PayPal and Stripe and the like are great to vet concepts. Right? They're great to figure out if something works, and they are tremendously problematic if you're trying to do large scale business, specifically if you're trying to do it fast. So yes, when
Brad was the miracle that came through, because I called him up. I'm like, dude, can we run $50 million through an account in 14 days that we have no previous track record with? And he's like, yeah, of course. He didn't say it exactly like that, but he came through. It was miraculous, dude. It was the best experience we ever had with dealing with merchants is when we linked up with you to work through this.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Well, part of that is it's really important to work with banking partners that understand your model, right? And if they don't understand your business model and they don't do underwriting to actually get it, the likelihood of having a problem is so high because they don't get it. And then on top of that, there's a time and a place to stick your neck out, and you are a good example, right? You've got great track record and history. So one, we understand the launch model. Two, we understand info products really, really well. So do several of our backend banks. And three, I personally can vouch for you and Will, right? And so that relationship matters too.
And we had great bank statements and great history and all that stuff too. But without your relationship and your extra support, because like we want to do launch stuff. We don't want to mess around with the merchant stuff. To have you be able to take care of that for us allowed us to stay in our lane and really optimize what we were good at, knowing we had a pro like you to do what you're really good at.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm glad that we could facilitate. But there's when I got on the phone with Will and he said, yeah, we've just been using PayPal. And he was like, I know. It's like, yeah, well, I'm glad it's good to address this before you go for the big hit here.
Yeah, and all this happened in 6.5 months, Brad. So the rapidity of this is what I find more remarkable than the 57 million some odd dollars. Is this thing didn't exist until March, and by May, and by December, it was what it was. And so that fast implementation, because we could have taken our time and got to 50 million in 12 months, and instead we did it in 6 months. And we did it in a way that was fun. We did it in a way that was pro-customer. Like we didn't just say, hey, we'll break some omelets to make some eggs. Like we did it in a way that involved the customer and brought them in and got them excited. One of the things that we didn't even talk about yet, Brad, is this is a non-refundable product. Like there's no refund policy around this product. And we talked about a little bit, they have to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Right.
And a user agreement. And the user agreement's pretty hardcore. And it says things like, hey, listen, you understand, this is not like if you take the payment plan option, this isn't like you could just decide to cancel it. This is a commitment. It's like buying a car. You can't just say, I don't want it anymore. I'm just going to quit paying on it. Right. So we had some very hardcore kind of code of conduct in there. And so we not only did we take a lot of money in, I bet you we keep more money than anybody who's done even a $20 million launch or higher gets to keep, because we don't have a refund policy in place. There's no 30-day, no questions asked money back guarantee, or there's no even conditional guarantee. There's just that whole, 3-day right of whatever.
Rescission, right.
Yeah, that's it. That's all they get. And so that I find even more remarkable. And again, you ask 100 marketers, they're going to say that's impossible. You can't sell a product that high price point to strangers and demand those types of stuff. And I say, why not? It's your planet, dude. Try it out. If you're wrong, you adjust it. But if you're right, you're $10 million richer probably.
Well, and you tried it out with a smaller sample set ahead of time.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like the original framing of that, Brad, because we didn't intend to not have a refund policy in place. We intended when we launched it publicly for the big launch to have that. But when we sold it in beta, we said, listen, right now, because it's in beta, all sales are final. And the way the example I gave was this, Brett, because if you want to learn really good salesmanship, learn how to use powerful metaphors that everybody could relate to. And so the one I used very often, I use many of them, but one of them was this: like, we've all seen a Yelp review where somebody went to the best restaurant we've ever ate at, where it was such a tasty deal, but because there was some renovation, pardon the interruption, there's some dust in the corner, best meal they ever ate, 5 out of 10, right? And I'm like, we don't want those people in here on this product. We don't want people that are judging the book by its cover without ever cracking it open and reading it. By the way, there's another metaphor for you, right? They come so naturally to me now because you got to make what you say relatable. And so we sold it that way. And then I said to them, I said, listen, we don't know. There may be a refund policy when we launch this publicly. We're leaning towards it. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. And then it's not just marketing again. It's the truth personified. When we saw the way people showed up without a refund and we knew we could sell it without the refund policy, we felt it was better for the customer. We would rather lose a sale than have somebody be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And that's not always true. And everything is contextual. In this particular context, we felt that it was better to do it that way.
I love that. I mean, look, my general frame on business and on life is that if you're not creating a win-win for all parties involved, you're doing it wrong. And because the fact of the matter is, if it's not like a big win for everybody, it won't last. Something's going to fall out and crumble over time. One of the things I like that you said was you like to view marketing campaigns as stories that unfold. And as we're talking about this story of this particular marketing campaign unfolding, inevitably we get to the final launch, right? So you did a bunch of different, and you referenced them to me personally previously as beta launches, right? And then you got to, presumably alpha in December and did the last element of this launch in December. Can you talk to me about what the elements of that launch were and how they changed from before, right? So what was the structure of the final launch? What were the elements? How did you solidify that?
Yeah, so beta launches, we did 3 of them: beta 1, beta 2, and beta 3. So we did beta 1 in June, we did beta 2 in July, and then we did beta 3 in September. We sold the first course in May, though, because we went back to those 10,000 people and said, you can buy the course now. It won't be delivered till June, and they bought it, right? So that's where officially our first sell. So we didn't really sell courses until June. But this is what we did originally, Brett. We promoted it with our list, and then we had like 5 affiliates promote it just last second. Hey, listen, we're doing this thing 2 days from now. Could you promote it? Like, that's such an impossible ask. So we got a couple of them, almost exclusively Amazon and eCommerce and Shopify people. No Bitcoin people, no crypto people, no even like pure internet marketing sort of folks. It was like Amazon folks for the most part. We did pick up 1 or 2 of these internet marketer types, right? But it was like 6 people. We had 5 webinars available, private webinars that people could promote. And then we had our own base of affiliates too that promoted a little bit, but they're smaller affiliates. They pay us money to teach. We teach them affiliate marketing, and then we invite them to private promotions. So we had that in play. And so we rolled that out. So literally it was like, we're going to launch this. We're going to launch this in 3 days. We launched it. We collected a couple partners, and we did a couple $1 million. I can't remember exactly how much it was. I think it was like 3 million, which is hilarious because most of the time that would be absolutely incredible. And I would be very happy. And I am, don't get me wrong, but it's all relative. Now it seems that big. Talk to me in a year, it'll probably be big again, right? Because, it's like, I don't think we're going to continue hitting $50 million every time we do this thing, but maybe we will. Well, we're certainly going to try. So that was the first one. Now, what was the structure? The structure was literally webinar invite page, and then the most basic sales page on the webinar that we would send them to sign up, and then a replay. And the replay would take them to that same basic sign up page. And that was beta 1. Beta 2 was kind of cool because, and this happened, what we're really good at, Brad, is not necessarily knowing exactly the specifics of how a launch is going to unfold. We're good at recognizing opportunities and putting muscle behind them. So what happened in beta 1 is we picked up this affiliate, and he's like, dude, I want to broker deals for you. If I go out and recruit other affiliates, can you give me a taste of whatever they make? And we said, sure. So an affiliate gets 40%, because this is where all of our traffic came from. 99% of our traffic came from affiliates and word of mouth. We spent $0 on paid advertising. I will say that again so everybody can hear that. $0 on paid advertising to produce this $57 million. And so we had an affiliate say, I want to broker deals for you. So we set up an affiliate brokering program. We gave him 10%. on any sale generated. So say an affiliate sells $1 million worth of the product. The affiliate gets 400,000. The third party broker gets 100,000. And then we get the 500,000 to the company, right? Which then gets split an unbelievable amount of ways. So when we say 57 million, that's gross. The net is a lot different than the gross. Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. I don't have 57 million in my bank account right now. Okay,
business owners know that, yet they still bullshit and use the top line number.
But the top line number is the sexiest thing, so we're going to go with that.
Absolutely.
We picked up a broker. And then this broker, so the second round, we did the same model again, Brad, but just a little bit more longer to accommodate more webinars. And now we started doing 2 webinars a day for 10 days straight. You want to talk about misery? That is very painful to do. Is it worth?
Hold on. So let me clarify. You've got a landing page that then has an opt-in for a webinar with a selection of webinar times that are live. Because originally you said you had a replay.
Not even that, right? I mean, dude, you want to talk about low tech, right? So say you're doing a webinar with me. So you invite your audience as an affiliate to the webinar. I have a page that says, hosted by Brad Waymart. Dan Hollings is going to come teach you this new crypto automation thing. And then for every affiliate, they had their own private webinar funnel that they could invite their people to. And then they had their own replay from the webinar that they could promote. And all of them were time limited. So typically a promotion cycle would last 6 days from the time they sent an invitation to come to the webinar to the time that the offer was expired and closed. And we would run that through a 2-week period of time. And so we had closing dates scattered throughout for each private affiliate, right? Now, what's so funny about this is you talk about the most basic copy. And this was done very intentionally because if you study old Eugene Schwartz cycles of market, when somebody's in a one cycle of the market, literally you could be like, do you want to lose weight? Buy this thing. By cycle 5, it's kind of like if you're a 43-year-old Asian woman who's tried 5 other ways to lose weight and they haven't worked, then buy this thing. The market fragments over time. But originally, and we tested this even during the launch and it converted just the same, but affiliates hated it. So we had to get rid of it. But essentially, the hook and the registration, the webinar, I just looked it up. Okay, here's what it looks like. This is the headline for the webinar invitation. If you're in crypto or thinking about investing, you must attend this one-of-a-kind web event. That's it.
And these are, so affiliates are sending an email out. These are email blasts to invite people to it?
Email almost exclusively. There was a couple variations of people who drove traffic through SEO or through other matters, social media, but most of them were email based. Email is still going to be your best bet for most.
And then that goes to a landing page to register for the webinar.
Yeah, so they send an email to the page that is the most boring page you'll ever see. If you're in crypto or thinking of investing, you must attend this website or this one-of-a-kind web event. And then there's about 100 words of copy in there that talks about, crypto's big, but it's also volatile. People are rushing in to make profits, but they don't know what they're doing, which is a tragedy because crypto done right can be fabulous. The trick is knowing what to do and what not to do in crypto. There's a safer, better way to do it through crypto. We think we can show you there. Join this event right now to find out. That's essentially the gist of it. It's very little more than what I just said off the top of my head. I wrote all the copy for this, right? And so they register for the event. The event happens on the webinar. And then on the webinar, Dan will do his presentation. He'll get to the closing session, and then that's when I'll take over. And essentially, we send them to a very basic landing page that is I have it in front of me. It says the plan, beta course access, special offer for, and then whoever the private affiliate's name is. Special offer for Brad Waymart's customers, special offer for Easy Pay Direct customers, right? And then it's like, we're going to launch the official course later, but because of the high demand, you can get on beta. What does beta mean? It means this. Why should you join beta? Here's why you should or shouldn't join it. Here's what you're going to get. And it's like it's a list of 8 things that they get. When does it start? We tell them when the first session. Do I need any experience? We answer that question. How do I get started? And then there's a call to action. Basically, it's that you can in 3 installments of 1,000 or 2,500 one time. And then we just have a little thing about it not being refundable, all sales final. And we explain that all in full disclosure. And that's it. There's literally, Brad, if you want to count it, there's 4 pages. There's the webinar registration page. Then there's the thank you page. Hey, congratulations, you successfully registered. Check your email. You're going to get an invite from me, Dan Hollings. It'll have the information how you can join the webinar when it happens, right? So those are your 2 pages there. there is the landing page that we send them to via the webinar when we pitch it. And that's what I call the webinar landing page. That's page 3. And then page 4 is the webinar replay page, which is a limited time webinar replay. It expires at the same time that the offer itself expires, which is typically 3 or 4 days after the webinar is done. And then it's a video that they watch of the recording, that when we make the call to action, that's where a button magically pops up underneath the video, and they click on that and it takes them to the same landing page, the webinar landing page that I just talked about, where they can sign up. And that's it. And so we would build that funnel for each private webinar affiliate that we would book. And we did have one big general webinar that lesser affiliates who couldn't put on numbers to a big webinar to do a private, like 50 or 100 small affiliates could promote one webinar, and we get like 400 or 500 people on that webinar. By the way, little interesting fact for you, Brad, webinar, the replay always converted better than the webinar did.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
There's so much psychology to that. I have no way I could explain it all here, but the idea here is oftentimes people shoot their load on the webinar and they don't leave anything for the follow-up. That's great. It's like the movie Colors, where the old cop and the young cop, he tells him the story where he's like, there's a bull, father bull, son bull, looking down the pasture, and there's a whole bunch of cows down there. And the young bull says to the father bull, says, "Dad, let's run down there and let's have sex with one of those cows," right? And then the father says, "Let's walk down there and let's have sex with all of the cows." It's like, we don't want to front load sales on the webinar at the expense of the replay. So there's a lot of little subtle things that we do there, but ultimately, they get to see the webinar, and some people can't buy something until they sleep on it, because I can only sell them when they're hanging out with me. But boy, they do a better job selling themselves when they're laying awake at night, tossing and turning, thinking about it, and they can't get it out of their head. That's a better sales job than you or I or anybody could ever do. And so if you lean into that, you can maximize the campaign. You might lose a little bit on the webinar point of sale, but you will make more money as a result. And that was what we did. So beta 1, essentially, Brad, was just a couple affiliates, shorter time frame. Beta 2 was more affiliates, longer time frame. And then beta 3 was more affiliates, longer time frame still. So I think in beta 3, we did 22 webinars in 14 days. And I hated life for a while, but I wiped my tears with the $100 bills that were coming in, So it was...
Hold on. So was beta 3 the one in December?
No. So December was the official launch of the product. So we bumped the price point up. So it was $2,500 in all the beta rounds. It was $34.97 when we launched it officially. That's when we brought you in to take credit cards. That's when we also did more production at that point to make it slicker, make it look nicer. We built a custom membership site by then. And all these people that bought beta were loving this because they got all this updated. In fact, the people who bought beta 1 got beta 2. They could retake it. They got beta 3. They could retake that. And so it pays to be early. And so it's not just a marketing angle, that's fact. So when we launched it officially, though, the only other thing, Brad, that we did, because this worked so well, we're like, why stray for something if it's good? We just put pre-launch in front of it. Now, our pre-launch was different than anybody else's. Is it was only about 4 days long. I wrote a PDF. And the PDF is called The Wiggle Factor, which is essentially the theme we use of how we're wiggling our way to wealth with crypto, because we're making these micro transactions, thousands of them a day, but automatically buying and selling crypto as it goes up and down because it's volatile. We turned a bug into a feature, if you will, right? And so I wrote the report, which was essentially 70% of what Dan says in the webinar in a written format. And so affiliates could, if they wish to, promote a landing page that is a squeeze page that would opt them in to get the report itself, and then the thank you page for the report would invite them to a webinar. And so we did a general webinar. We did 2 general webinars, meaning anybody could promote those. And then we did a bunch of private webinars with folks, again, one-on-one. The general webinar, Brad, we had 11,000 some odd people on it on day 1. So
I recall.
Yeah, you and I were texting while the webinar was going on, right?
Yes.
And because you were like, dude, I'm seeing it come in. I'm like, dude, we're on here live. We would have done better, but we scheduled 2 webinars that day. That webinar was at noon, and then we had a second webinar at 4 p.m. 4 hours in, we had to stop the webinar to get on the next webinar but we had 3,000 people 4 hours in still on there.
That's crazy.
Will, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. He could not believe we had to end a webinar with 3,000 people still on it. I mean, to this day, I think it haunts him. And we learn next time we don't do 2 webinars on day one. We do 1 webinar, and if it's 6 hours, it's 6 hours. If it's 8 hours, it's 8 hours.
But did you frame that as pre-launch? Sorry, you said the official launch was there.
The official launch, like card open, coincided when we did that webinar, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was no sales page. Brad, this is so funny. There was no official sales page, no long form, hard hitting sales copy. There was no sales video, like a produced sales video. It was all webinars and webinar replays. And then we did these things called webathons too, which we hadn't done before, which was just Will and I, literally, dude, this was on a Saturday and Sunday, just handling objections for 4 or 5 hours each day. The whole frame is like, hey, listen, you're looking at the plan. You may buy, you may not buy. I'm sure that there's something that you want to know that you don't know yet, or some question you have, or something about this that you need some more insight on before you make the decision that's right for you. Whether it's a yes decision or no decision, you need to make a decision. We're here to help you. We get on these things and jam for 4 or 5 hours. And I'll tell you what, Brad, here's a little insight that a lot of people miss that I think is so important, is it doesn't really matter what you're saying there. What you're doing is most impactful. When somebody in the audience says, wow, these guys are willing to hang in there this long with me. They're willing to go the extra mile. They're willing to put it out there. Who else does that? Nobody else is there saying, hang in there with me. Yeah. How you show up is more impactful than the words that you use when you show up, if you can get to that point. Another way to put it is Napoleon said, sometimes quantity becomes its own quality. And the fact that we were so available and so open and so willing to answer all of the questions, especially the hard ones, won a lot of people over who we otherwise wouldn't, because of how we demonstrated that we cared. Anybody can tell you that they care, right? How do they show up with empathy to care? And that's what we did, which, by the way, Brad, allows me to get away with a lot of the shit that I get away with, when I'm like borderline abusive to customers, because they know it's coming from a place of love. When I'm like, dude, you can do better than this. I don't want to hear that stuff anymore. Come on, that's the old you. Let's talk about the new you. What would the new you need to believe in order to make this true? And they're like, you're right, Dad. Okay, I've been playing smaller than I should be. It's like, that's when you get permission to do those things. That's when you can say, listen, I don't know exactly when this thing how long it'll be. And they'll be like, okay, I understand. I'm focusing on the wrong things. That's when you earn that. So that was our model, Brett. It's the weirdest, goofiest. Nobody's ever taught that model. We've never done that model before. Most hodgepodge thing that I've ever seen, but we hyper optimized it for the specifics of the situation, the timing, the proof, the context, everything. And that's why it crushed.
Let me ask you one thing on that. And I know we're coming up on time here, but you are the type of person that is comfortable, clearly, just getting up and talking, right? And so you going into that environment, I know that there are a lot of business owners that are not in the spotlight because they're afraid to be in the spotlight. And they're also not going to get up in front of a whole bunch of people because they don't want to be barraged with questions because they're uncertain about how to answer them. Or they're afraid that they will get in that position where their back's against a wall. How do you view that? And did you do any prep for that session, or did you think through it ahead of time? What objections were going to be there? How are we going to handle them? What positioning do we want to take?
The amount of prep work is insane. The brilliance is when somebody feels like what I do is effortless. That's when I know I do a good job, because if only they knew the amount of effort it took to make it look effortless, it would blow their mind. Part of the reason you can feel so confident getting up and speaking like this is because of you're so well prepared. And you can't do that in 3 weeks. You can't cram that in. This is years and years and years of experience reinvested and compounded upon itself. I will tell you where I started. First of all, this will be helpful to people that are in the beginning of that journey. Brad, is I used to do webinars back in 2008 where I'm like, listen, I think I can help you on this thing. I don't know if I can help you. If you're willing to risk it, some of your time, come on in and I'll see if I can, screw you up more or help you more. I don't know which, but it'll be fun either way. And I would just try to whack that piñata from every angle and see if some candy would fall out of it. I was open and curious to see what would happen. And I would frame it in such a way where everybody felt safe and we could do that. So I played the small stages before I got to Madison Square Garden. And so when I got there, I felt very confident that I could do that. The other thing that I like about this is its differentiation. You want to talk about strategic positioning. People will judge you not just by what you're giving them, but vis-a-vis direct alternatives and even indirect alternatives, including sleep, including doing nothing, right? And so you have to stand out in some way, shape, or form. And so this is important. What motivates me to do this is I know other people won't do this. And that's my advantage over the competition, which gets me excited and gets me pumped up, and it's exhilarating. But I will tell you the other thing too with this, Brad, is it doesn't have to be you. It's your organization. If your organization can show up in a way that is so much to the audience benefit, where it communicates to the audience, at the end of the day, we care about you more than the next guy. At the end of the day, even if things go wrong, we got you. We're here for you. It doesn't have to be you personally. It can be your organization. And so that's what I would urge you. But I will tell you, for me, Brad, what I discovered, this is where I discovered this. I'll never forget this. This is a very defining moment of my life, is when I first started doing sales webinars. Maybe I'd get 100 people on the webinar, small potatoes. But I would do my 90 minutes or my 75 minutes, and I would run out of slides, and there'd still be like 50 people on there. And I'm like, dude, I got 50 people here. Maybe I can help somebody. Let me try it. And I would go for another hour because they were kind of engaged. They were kind of chatting. They were trying to, getting excited, right? And then I would look at the sales, and I would make 2 sales, and I would do the math. I'd be like, okay, I sold a $200 product. I spent an hour. I made $400, $400 an hour. That's good wage. That's pretty good money. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what the hell? There's still 40 people left. I'll go another hour. I squeeze blood out of that rock. I make another sale. And now I'm making only $200 an hour. And I was happy with that at the time, because financially that was good enough for me. What I wasn't aware of was I was investing in my future capabilities, because you want to learn how to close. Do this thousands of hours with real live souls and real money on the line. And my biggest breakthroughs, Brad, came out of boredom more than creativity. Because I'm like, man, I've said the same close a million freaking times just for my own amusement. Let me try something else. Oh, shit, that actually worked better than anything I've ever done before. Now, Brad, I know you're ready to say something, but I got one thing to top this off. I'm on Zoom. The reason I got this Zoom shirt is because I'm the only marketer Zoom has ever brought in to train their staff and their user base on how to do webinars. We trained it right before they went public. And I'm telling this same story to everybody on Zoom. And then the guy running it from Zoom, he says, okay, it's time to go. We had hundreds of people still on. And Will texts me afterwards. He says, dude, why did he close the webinar so good? I said, dude, look at the clock. It's 12:30. He had to go to lunch. It's like, that's what most people do. They think, well, a webinar can't be more than 90 minutes. It's your show. Run it however you want to run it.
Yeah. Well, there were 2 things that jumped out there. One was that I'm always thinking about, or very often thinking about, is you said, I had to try something different out of boredom. But the reason for that, and you preceded that by saying, I had done the same close thousands of times. And I think that that's a really important takeaway from a leadership perspective, to push down to your sales team, or if you're a salesperson, to allow that to resonate. You do not change. You do one thing 1,000 times, and then you do the variation, right?
I mean, you get something that's solid, that is predictable, and that works well. And that's typically where everybody else in your industry will get. And so that's where most people stop, right? So we all kind of use the same techniques because they work and they're powerful. And we all get to about the same place. Oh, he's doing millions. He's doing a couple million. He's doing a couple million. Fantastic, right? That's incremental jockeying for position. That's drag racing, right? That's when you decide to say, listen, how do I change the industry? And that's when you decide to do experimentation in a safe way. But at the same time, that's where ultimately the breakthroughs come from. Otherwise, you might eke out another million or 2, but you ain't going to eke out 10 or 20 from 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 without something innovating. Now, that's one way. There's other ways to do it, but that's one micro application of the innovation required to break through the ceilings of your industry.
Yeah, and the other major takeaway for me there was this idea of, oh, I've still got 50 people on the webinar. Oh, I've still got 40 people on the webinar. And I know from talking from me, my personal feelings, and also many of our clients, when people start to drip off of a webinar, or if somebody starts walking out of the room when you're speaking, people get in their own head and they have this idea of, they're not interested, I'm not doing well enough, they're leaving, instead of, I still have all these people in the room to test things on. Let me keep going and see if I can find another lever, another trigger here that might get a couple more sales out of it. So I really like the mentality behind that because, like you said, your expertise has grown out of boredom more than anything. So you're up there and you've got this space left, this time left, and you're like, I've still got this opportunity to figure it out. Let me try something else and see what works. So I love that.
The catalyst for all this, Brad, too, this is like the thing that everything else rests upon is, in my mind, it's like, I can help this person. This person has a blockage or a limitation related to this topic or just in general. And if I have to keep cracking it open till I can break this limitation free, I'm up for the task. And so that's where it's all predicated on that concept. That says, I got 40 souls on this webinar. If I can get through to one of them who I know this is in their best interest,
yeah,
I absolutely know it. But for some reason, they're holding themselves back when they shouldn't be. How do I reach them? Now, I love one-to-many selling because I got 50 people that I can experiment with to see if I can get the one. On a one-on-one selling, it's one-to-one. My ADD don't work that well with I got to have 50 people. So I can be like, but that's where it all comes from. So everything else is secondary to that. Now, can that make more sales? Damn right it can, right? Will that make happier customers? Sure it will. Will that demonstration above and beyond that point of sale drip through the rest of the campaign and how I show up? Will that differentiate me from other people? Yeah. Will it give me the ability to refine and do technique and be different than the same people who've read the same books, who spout the same nonsense over and over again? You bet it all will be. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm like, how do I help this person be more of themselves than they currently are right now? And I know that sounds hokey and it's goofy, and I wouldn't do it if there wasn't profit on the line. Don't get me wrong, right? But that is the motivation.
Sure. Look, I don't believe in altruism. I don't believe that altruism exists. I think that we all do things for selfish motives. And it might be as simple as it makes me feel good to donate to charity, right? For example. But that doesn't take away from the value that is delivered to the other person. And I think that messaging, what's important for people to recognize is that if you keep the other party in mind and you're truly trying to deliver the win for the other party, the win for you is built into that. And so everything that you're saying, yes, I think it comes off as hokey to some people, but I think that, as you pointed out, it's not a charity, right? You're doing it because doing that is also the most profitable thing that you can possibly do.
Correct. And Brad, I'm like a mother bear with my cubs here. It's like, if you buy some other joker's nonsense product that's half as good as this or a tenth as good as this, and then they fuck you over, right? I'm going to be pissed off because I screwed up, because I could have captured you, put the golden handcuffs on your ass, right? And I could have took care of you, because I can't influence you when you're in their program. I can only influence you when you're in my program. And so that's a lot of the motivation too that comes from that, is not just let me help you, let me protect you from the wolves and these nefarious individuals that are in a majority of industry where there's opportunity, because with that's what attracts them. The bigger the opportunity, the bigger the wolves and the jackals come out. And let's talk about crypto, right? Is like, I could throw a rock and hit 5 guys that are scamming somebody right now in crypto.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this before we wrap here. So you've been, we didn't get to talk about you being a rapper in your previous life, which I'm sad about.
Or a monk. We didn't talk about that either.
But for another time. But you've been in this space, right? Copy, internet marketing, webinars, launch, persuasion to sell, courses, info products, all these things that all tie together for a long time. What do you do differently today when you're operating at the scale of many millions a year, a $57 million launch in the last 6.5 months? What do you do differently today, or how do you approach it differently if there's one or two things that come to mind versus when you started?
Yeah, I think I hate being a big company, except for the money, right? The money's the best part about it. But it's like a battleship can't churn very quickly. It's very slow. And so big companies have weaknesses. We have, I don't know how many people we have, 44, 50 people on staff, something like that. I mean, the good news is he runs all the day-to-day stuff. I couldn't run a lemonade stand effectively, Brad, much less a big business or even a small business. Like a dry cleaner would be too much for me to handle. And so I have a partner who earns his keep on that and allows me to be the scientist in the lab. What I try to do now is build things that are more future forward compatible as opposed to when I got started, what made me the most money and made the needle move the most is these hyper fluctuations and changes in the marketplace. So like, I'll give you a silly example. Like Facebook changed because of the Mac iOS update or the Apple one that says we're no longer doing this track. That'd have been a perfect opportunity. And I'm sure some people seized upon that, created a product around that, or a service or a solution, a software, et cetera, right? And that is agile and that's effective because giants won't go into those little crevices. But as you grow and as a company and the more sophisticated you get, the harder that becomes to clone and to communicate. So I'm trying to find more elegant ways to have even bigger impact with less moving pieces. And then that goes to the second thing, Brad, which is specialization. The bigger we get, the more we specialize. People think it's the opposite. The bigger you get, the more you generalize. But like in this particular case, we didn't create the product for the plan. That was Dan Hollings. We published it, right? And so we were able to 100% stay in the marketing side of things, and he could stay in the fulfillment side of things. When we hit that one broker, we then rolled out multiple brokers. We had like 6 brokers that broker 90% of the affiliates that we brought in for the launch.
Oh, wow.
And so it was, dude, Brad, I can't tell you how many times I had this conversation where somebody's like, hey, listen, do you know so-and-so? I'm like, yeah. They're like, should I broker them anyway? I'm like, hell yeah. Even if I could, Brad, I could have probably called them up and be like, promote this thing. And they probably would have said yes. I didn't want to even do that. I would rather give 10% to somebody else who would close a warm lead from a relationship I had developed 6 years ago. Simply because I didn't want to have to manage that person, think about that person, follow that person up, or have any responsibility to that person other than the responsibility of producing the best damn marketing that I could for them. And so as we've gotten bigger, we've become more and more specialized into the capabilities that we're really good at. And Will's developed some great operational capabilities. Our support is unbelievably good. And so like these are assets, and there's only a few of them. And we tend to strengthen our strengths more than try to fix our weaknesses. And then we rely on people like you to because of the reputation we have and the relationship we have to help us in your strength. We try to pair together as many strengths as we can across the board and put the glue on there to, cohesively make them work, as opposed to try to take on more responsibility in areas where we know we can't be the best at.
I love that, man. And you pay for it sometimes.
Oh, God.
Up front. Yeah. But the value is there for you.
You pay for it once as opposed to paying for it forever later because of the bad idea of trying to take it all on.
Yep.
There's a payment involved. It's just a matter of when and how much. And up front is almost always better. There's no doubt about you're going to pay for it one way or another. And as we gotten older, Brad, too, my health, my physical and emotional well-being have become a higher priority than my financial well-being, which I'm proud of, because the hardest thing you can do is when you get into a groove to get out of that groove. We as a species, we're very habit-based. We're very consistent. When we get something going, we just want to keep it going, even if it doesn't necessarily work for us. So this is why guys who get rich, like, they're sick all the time. Their kids don't even recognize them anymore. But what's safe for them is to continuing doing the thing that they're good at. What I'm proud of in my life is that I've been able to not lean more into the thing that's exciting, exhilarating, that I'm absolutely great at, and that I've put a whole bunch of my life into being good at. I'm able to say, okay, I don't have to be like Hannibal here and try to conquer the next nation and the next nation and the next nation, or like Alexander the Great, to where we expand the empire and then everything falls apart in one generation. It's like now it becomes less about doing more financially. It becomes more about doing more emotionally, doing more spiritually, doing more well physically, but still the business is the spark. It's the purpose, right? It's the calling for me. It's the canvas in which I paint upon. And so I still have that, but I try to, as much as possible, most of the time, try to keep it within healthy boundaries. And that's something that I'm very proud of. So that's the other thing that I've done differently. So how does that factor strategic positioning and thinking and all this, right? It changes the rules. I now have to develop things that have more of a life cycle to them, and they have to be more, there's more ingenuity involved and there's less grunt work involved. And that is fun for me because that is net new. How do we solve this problem in a unique way that not only makes the cash register ring, not only satisfies customers, makes them happy, does it better than the competition, but does it in a way where a majority of my life I can spend doing other things than running my life around my business. I want to run my business around my life more. And I'm not good at it yet. I'm okay at it. I'm probably decent at it, but I'm working on becoming excellent in that area too.
That's great, man. Well, I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate you carving out time. We could talk for literally 7 hours because we have, and I have to pull myself away anytime I want to try to get sleep. But I appreciate you laying it out, man. I think it's super helpful for a lot of people to hear that context, hear the thinking that went through that launch, and how you organize things. So I appreciate you taking the time out, man. I know that you don't really want people to find you, but is there anything that you'd like to point people to? Is there anywhere?
Oh, yeah. And I don't even have it on my desk right now, but my book, One to Many, it's the definitive Bible on webinars, pitch webinars. So go to Amazon, get the book, One to Many. It'll set you back a whopping $10 on Kindle. And it'll show all my webinar strategies in terms of structuring a webinar from start to finish.
Awesome. I love it, man. Well, we'll put a link in the show notes on beyondthemill.com and make sure that we get it in front of people. Appreciate you, man.
You too.
If you learned one thing on this episode, share it with another entrepreneur. They need to hear it. Also subscribe so that new episodes just show up on your phone. It's a lot easier that way. And if you want the really good stuff, check out our free BAM! Tactics and Strategies course. It's where we curate the best tips, tricks, and tools that our guests know, whether they've shared them on the podcast or not. Just go to beyondthemill.com. You'll also find previous episodes and show notes at beyondthemill.com.